Welcome to Tech in the Car. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about Starlink from SpaceX and Elon Musk. I'm going to tell you all about it, how it works, what it does, talk to you about my experiences and other people's experiences. But first, we're going to talk a bit about the existing broadband you might have going to your home, how it works, what the differences are between fiber and DSL, so you understand a bit first. So let's get into this video. Don't forget to give me a like if you find it useful.
Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss a new video.
Let's start with discussing the broadband you might well have now. Typically when people talk about broadband to the house, they talk about either ADSL or DSL and fiber or cable. Those are the two main kinds, but there are different categories in each of those. ADSL used the existing copper network that had been there from the start of your phone network in the country where you live. And it was restricted by distance, and it's still restricted by distance because copper was never designed to carry digital data. It was only designed to carry voice. It's an analog technology, and that is really, really important here. Everything that internet providers and phone companies have done to get broadband through traditional copper phone lines relies on them trying to send digital information over analog networks, and that is very inefficient, and that causes a lot of trouble. So when somebody talks to you about fiber to the cabinet, or what most people would just call fiber, it's not actually what it sounds like. You might have seen at the end of your road little green boxes. Maybe they're not green, they might be grey, or it might even be on a pole at the end of your street. Those places, those cabinets, those poles have areas where fiber is connected. So what your internet company, what your phone company has done is they've put cable, fiber optic cable, which transmits data digitally into those cabinets or into those poles. And then they're using the existing copper network to get that internet from those cabinets or from the curb or from the poles to your home. And this is very, very restricted in terms of distance. The original broadband coming to your home used something called ADSL. ADSL stands for Asymmetric Digital Subscriber Line. And originally when it first started, it gave you 500 kilobits. That's less than 1 megabit download speeds. I remember being on the beta and having BT here in the UK come in and install it, and it was amazing not having to use the phone lines for the internet. As technology progressed, ADSL 2+ became the next technology which was widely used, and that provided speeds of up to 24 megabits down and I think a few megabits up. And that was a big improvement, and that is what a lot of people still use today. And then the phone networks realized that actually they can put fiber optic cable to those cabinets, to those poles, and then use a very fast version of ADSL to get faster speeds to your home. Can you guess what the very fast version of ADSL was called? VDSL, Very Fast Digital Subscriber Line. Really original name, right? And that allowed speeds of up to 80 megabits per second download. And it's really important to consider the further you are away from the cabinet or the curb point where the fiber optic is connected, the slower it gets. And you may get to a point where you're 1,000 meters, 1,500 meters away, where actually your VDSL2, which your internet provider will call fiber, is actually slower than traditional ADSL2+, because VDSL is much, much, much more sensitive to distance and noise. Remember, rain can actually cause your internet connection to drop out. Noise in your home can cause the internet connection to drop out because it's trying to send digital data down an analog copper line, which is super sensitive to noise, and share it too with your phone calls. So that's an explainer on using the copper part of your phone line to transmit data. There is an even faster technology now called G-Fast in the UK, which allows up to 330 megabits download, which is very fast, though not as fast as full cable or full fiber. However, it's even more restricted with distance. With G-Fast, you can only get at 330 megabits if you're very, very close to the cabinet. In fact, it's designed to work at distances of up to 250 meters, and as you get further away, it will drop more and more and more until eventually it will actually be slower than traditional VDSL 2+. So distance is super, super important here, and this is one of the main causes of problems with the phone networks, which we'll get onto in a second. Let's talk about cable or full fiber. So the next kind of technology used to connect your home is full fiber or cable, something like in the UK Virgin Media provides, or BT calls fiber to the premises, FTTP. That means all the way from the exchange to your home is fiber. In reality, your home is connected probably to the fiber connection at the cabinet at the end of your street. Full fiber can give you speeds of up to 10 gigabits, although most fiber companies provide around 1 gigabit per second, although they have various plans which will let you go between 100 and 1 gigabit incrementally depending on how much you want to spend. And full fiber is symmetrical, which means that you can have the same speed upload as download, which you can't have with ADSL and VDSL, because remember, that's asymmetric digital subscriber line. It means you don't get the same speeds up and down, which is why typically uploads are slower, which isn't very helpful when you're making YouTube videos and need a fast upload speed. So those are the traditional technologies that you have. So what are the problems with them? The trouble with traditional fiber to the cabinet or VDSL technology is it requires there to be a cabinet or a pole within a certain distance of your house. Remember, a 1 mile distance or 1,600 meters, it becomes faster to use traditional ADSL. That means that speeds at 700, 800 meters can be 10 megabits or slower, which is traditionally not very fast. And if you consider that if you're streaming Netflix, YouTube, listening to music, maybe you have security cameras using the internet, your bandwidth is going to run out very, very fast and you're going to have drop-offs and slowness. So that is one of the problems you have. This relies on the phone companies to put these cabinets in. Now here in the UK, the problem is these phone cabinets have been in there for a very, very long time. They were put there when the phone networks were designed, and lots of areas don't have phone cabinets anywhere remotely near to them. Even where I am now, the nearest phone cabinet is about 800 to 900 meters away, which means I get very slow speeds. And there are people all over the world where the nearest fiber connection point, the nearest cabinet or pole, is miles and miles away, which means their speeds are totally unusable. And for the internet companies and the phone companies, it's not economically sensible for them to put in extra cabinets and all that wiring to the middle of nowhere. It just doesn't make sense. It's really expensive, and the amount of customers they will have in that same area will be much less than in a more densely populated area, so it's not financially viable. What this means is people in rural areas, or even people in areas where their town maybe has older infrastructure, are left out, and they have slower speeds and they can't do anything about it. And people in more densely populated areas might have multiple choices of full fiber, including in some towns there is even multiple fiber providers, like Eastbourne for example. There is Lightning Fiber, City Fiber and Openreach installing fiber, but they're only covering the areas which are most densely populated with the best infrastructure. So areas on the outskirts of town are left out. And this is a problem all over the country and all over the world. People are being left out, and this is where Starlink comes in. There are other alternatives such as cellular-based 4G or 5G networks, but the same situation applies there. If you've got bad infrastructure for landline-based internet, generally the cellular infrastructure is equally poor and slow. So for lots of people that isn't an option either. What happens if you have a bit of money in your pocket and you want to get an internet connection to your home where you're not served? There is something called FTTPoD, which is fiber to the premises on demand, and it lets you pay Openreach, which is the UK's infrastructure provider, to connect you directly to fiber to your home. However, that can be incredibly expensive. Prices can be between £20,000 to £70,000, which is absolutely insane, and not many people can afford that. You can help offset those costs a bit. Depending on where you live, you can get a voucher from the government which will cover costs up to £1,500 for a home and up to £3,500 for a business. But still, if your bill from BT is £50,000, that's not really going to make much difference in the scheme of things. So it's really, really hard. The most successful rural communities have clubbed together and worked together with multiple households to share the costs of such an infrastructure build. And in those situations, it works really well. But generally speaking, you have to wait for the internet companies to get out unless you've got a lot of disposable income to burn, or you're a business which really requires a fast internet connection and you can afford to offset those costs. Let's talk about satellite internet now before we start talking about Starlink. So there are many companies that offer internet over satellite, but traditionally it's very expensive, it's very slow. If you're lucky, you'll get 20 megabits download. There are data caps, which means that you can't really use it on a household with lots of people streaming or using data. And also they have very high latency times, which means essentially the amount of time it takes for you to request a website to load is very slow. In fact, it can take up to half a second in some cases for you to request a page before something appears. That means that stuff like shopping online or playing games would be basically impossible, as well as video calls for work, because you just wouldn't be able to know what was going on at the other end until a second later, which is, ridiculous. So satellite internet companies right now have been doing it the old-fashioned way, and it took Starlink and Elon Musk really to shake it up with their system. What is Starlink? Starlink is a satellite internet company just like all the others, but the difference is where the satellites are in the sky. Traditional internet companies put satellites in geosynchronous orbit. That means that if it's above the UK, it always stays above the UK, no matter how many times the Earth spins. This, however, means they're at a height of 22,000 miles, which is why it's so slow for the request for the web page to come down and go back up again. Where Starlink solves that problem is they put their satellites at about 330 miles up, which is a significantly smaller distance, which means that the amount of time it takes to request a web page right now is around 20 milliseconds, and we're looking at it getting faster and faster as Elon Musk updates the satellite technology. And this is the next big advantage Starlink have. Starlink being a part of SpaceX means that they can build the satellites and launch them regularly. In fact, over the last 2 months, there's been over 7 launches of Starlink satellites, each launch sending up 60 satellites. In fact, right now there's over 1,000 satellites in orbit, and they're going to continue being launched until the entire world is covered with satellites, which means anyone, anywhere will be able to get fast internet speeds. Right now, Starlink is in beta, and it offers speeds of between 50 megabits and 150 megabits. But as you'll see from Gareth in a minute, the speeds that you get are actually a lot higher. Right now, you can probably get between 200 and 300 megabits, and it gets faster with every firmware update and every improvement that Starlink rolls out. So Starlink is really, really helping, and there's no data cap either. So Starlink is a game changer for getting internet around the world at faster speeds and at lower prices than competitors as well. It's a huge, huge deal. So how does Starlink work? Well, I mentioned the satellites are about 300 miles above the ground. That's really, really good as far as latency goes, but it creates a problem because it means somehow these satellite dishes have to track the satellites that are moving very fast across the sky, and they don't move. So how does SpaceX do this? It uses something called a phased array antenna. Essentially, there are lots of little tiny antennas which all are put into one dish, which then can curve the way dishes looks so it can pick up the satellite as they move across the sky. That's a very simple explanation. There are far more complicated explanations on the internet if you want to know more about them. It's not a new technology, but it's not being used in this way before, and it's very, very clever. Right now, Starlink can hook onto one satellite at a time. However, as it iterates and SpaceX gets better and better and better, Starlink might be able, with hardware updates, to be able to lock on to more than one satellite at a time. And they're improving the ways that it connects and the speeds and the latency all the time, which is what the beta is all about. What do you get in the box with Starlink? Well, Starlink have really, really thought about this, and it's a really, really cool little package. Oh, I shouldn't say little because it's a big box, but you get the satellite dish, you get the power connector, and you get a router included. They're all plugged in the box already. So all you literally have to do is put the dish out on its mount in the garden facing the sky and plug it in. Once the dish is plugged in, it will change its position to go straight up, and then it will find the satellites, and then it will rotate in the direction the satellites are. The satellites are, for most people, in the north sky, depending on where you're located in the world, but generally it's the north sky. And that means the satellite dish needs a clear view of the north sky. If you don't have a clear view of the north sky, then you need to put it on your roof or on top of the building. And there are mounts that Starlink sells that you can use to put them on the roof. However, you can just use a traditional satellite mount. It's a very, very simple system to use. Once it's plugged in, once it's got the satellite, all you have to do is connect to Wi-Fi, name your Wi-Fi network on Starlink, whatever you want, and that's it. You're on the internet. Nice and easy. If you're in an area that has coverage, then it means you have service straight away, and you have very, very fast service, which will get faster and faster and faster. Right now in beta, Starlink use what they call cells, and these cells are areas which they've turned on service in, where their satellites are pointing a beam down to cover that area and that area alone, and that area that they pick seems to be about 10 miles across in a hexagonal shape, and they pick those based on demand, and they're turning those on as they come along in beta. It's unclear if they will turn on all of these cells at once or if they will keep adding to them one by one. It seems more likely that when they finish their beta testing, they'll just switch everything on and it will work everywhere. Starlink uses ground stations because obviously once you make a request to the satellite, it has to come down to the ground and connect to the internet through traditional methods. So they have ground stations around the world, and they're opening up new ground stations all the time, which provide the backhaul end to the Starlink system. What happens if you're out of cell? So some people, like myself, have Starlink, but they're not in cell, and that might be various reasons. Maybe they ordered it and moved, maybe Starlink made an error, maybe they're just experimenting with it. Whatever the reason is, some people will have Starlink in areas where they don't have cell coverage right now, and in those cases that means they will have unreliable service which will not give them usable connections. Now it does vary depending on where you are, because you might be using a different address to the address you told Starlink, but if you're still in an active cell, it will still work. The problem comes if you're out of cell. Right now Starlink is only meant to be used in the location specified when you place the order. That's not to say that it won't work, it just won't work very well most cases. In fact, it won't be usable in lots of cases, which is my experience. Please Starlink, turn on my cell so I can get some decent coverage, because I need decent uploads for these videos. Please Elon, please. If you live in an area with great coverage, well then you're really, really lucky. And let's hear what Gareth has to say, and I'll link his channel down below.
So here's my summary of Starlink ownership. I was so excited to get it, and it seemed to be this worldwide interest in the system and what it was and how it performed. And I think it really appealed to me because I'm in a relatively remote location, and my broadband sucks. It's rubbish. It was rubbish. So I chose to go with this beta program, and it was expensive. Yeah, I get that. It costs quite a lot of money, and it costs quite a lot of money per month. Now, if we look at the speed tests whenever Starlink first arrived, I've got them on screen now, you're going to see a vast improvement. And this is only over 4 weeks. The setup was incredibly easy. Installing this thing was a piece of cake, apart from drilling a hole in a wall and somebody getting up on the roof and sticking it on the chimney. It really was very easy. In terms of connecting my own router, it was a case of disconnecting DES and sticking the Ethernet in my current router, and it picked it all up automatically because it's DC HP. And of course that possibly comes with its own restrictions, which I don't necessarily understand. I've said, and I'll say it again, I'm not massively technically minded, or I'm not good with networking and stuff like that, but I find it very, very easy to set up. Speed and stability have improved dramatically. The speeds this morning, the lowest I think was 290 meg, the highest was maybe 360, 370. And that was after a firmware update overnight. And of course we had one of those obstructions pop up during that firmware update. Starlink for me is a game changer, and it is something that I'm loving. I really enjoy the highs and lows of it. I enjoy the experience of it. I like being part of the community. It turns out there's this amazing community online that have this huge interest in Starlink. There's people asking questions from all across the world. There's people wanting to know, is this going to change their connectivity where they live in rural areas? And the answer is yes, it will. It will change everything for you. It's much better than if you haven't got internet for a start. Well, it's a massive leap forward. If you've got really poor cellular or really weak mobile signal, it's incredible, and it will change how you communicate with the world. My summary is this: Starlink is great and I really enjoy it. I'm excited about the future of it, and I cannot wait to see what happens over the next few months.
Let's do a walkthrough of the app now and talk a bit about how it works. So if you look at the app, you'll be able to see lots of information, which is really useful. So download it on Android or iOS from the Play Store or from the App Store. And on the app, you'll be able to see various bits of information. So it will show you, first of all, the status of the app. So it will say online, good connection, or online poor connection. If it's obstructed, i.e. there are things in the way blocking the view of the satellite, it will tell you that, and it will show you a circle so you can see where those obstructions are. If you're out of an active cell area, it will show obstructions even if there aren't any, so just be aware of that. You can scroll across and you can see any information which Starlink might have for you. So if you're in the wrong location, or if there's intermittent service or the service goes down, it will tell you that. And on the other screen, if you swipe to the left, it will show you what's connected to your router. You don't have to use a Starlink router, but the access to this app is only possible through the Starlink router unless you've got a router and you know how to configure a static lease for that. If you don't know what that means and you don't want to do it, then don't worry about it. You don't have to. Some people would prefer to replace the Starlink router because there are systems which offer better Wi-Fi service throughout your house, like Nest Wi-Fi, Netgear Orbi, and various other systems as well. In the top right-hand corner, you can click on statistics and you can see your ping. Your ping shows you how often and how reliable your connection to the internet is. If it's constant, it will be a straight line along the top. If there are any dropouts, you will see that there as well. And it will show you if there are any obstructions which cause the internet to stop working or any other outages as well. Underneath that is latency. Latency will show you how long it takes for a request to go up to the internet and come back down again. And again, that will show you over the last 12 hours or 24 hours how reliable your internet connection is. Typically, you might get 20 to 40 seconds latency, but it might go up and it might come down. The idea being to lower it with time with Starlink as it gets more and more advanced and the updates happen. Underneath that, you'll see your upload and download usage, and it will show you in graph form how much internet you've been using, uploads and downloads. Remember, Starlink in beta is currently unlimited, so you can access it and have no limits on your uploads and downloads. Underneath that, it shows your SNR. SNR is the signal to noise ratio. It is basically telling you the strength of the connection to the satellite that Starlink is using. A good solid connection gives you an SNR of 9. If it's going up and down, it means the connection is dropping all the time, and that will probably be reflected in your ping at the top, showing you to be offline and the internet connection dropping out. Underneath the SNI, it will show you the pings to Google, to Fortnite, and to Counter-Strike Go, so you have some idea of what your network connection is doing right now. At the bottom of the screen, there is 3 tabs. One is network, which is your internet connection, which we just looked at. Then you have settings, and then you have support. If we look at settings, settings lets you see your Wi-Fi network details. So it will let you adjust the name of the Wi-Fi network, change the password, turn on the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands, and check on those settings. It will also let you reboot the Wi-Fi and stow the dish so it is ready to be moved if you want to move it. And what stowing means is instead of it being at an angle, it will go flat. If we go into support, support gives you help questions that you can see if you have any problems. It also lets you contact support directly. So if you have any questions, you can ask support. And if you scroll to the bottom of the support tab, it says additional resources, and then it says advanced. If you click on advanced, it will then show your router firmware and your satellite dish firmware as well, so you can see what software it's running. What Debug will show you is the same information you've already seen in the app, but in a more raw format, as well as extra information which you maybe couldn't see in the app. So it's great for somebody that wants to see what exactly is going on with their dish. In conclusion, Starlink is a fantastic way of fixing broadband issues around the world. SpaceX have got a fantastic opportunity here because they're able to launch the satellites and build the satellites, and they're not relying on anybody else for that service, which means they can put their network up and iterate it and update it and improve it faster than anyone else can. There is no other internet company which is also a rocket company which launches satellites and astronauts. Everybody else has to pay somebody else for that service, so that's a huge advantage. And the fact that Elon Musk is so ambitious with everything he does means you can believe that Starlink will keep updating and getting better and better and better and better. In fact, he said the idea is for Starlink to do 1 gigabit connections, which is the same speed as lots of fiber to the premises. Is fiber to the premises still better? Yes, it is, because it can go faster and faster and faster. You can get 10 gigabits now, and it may even get faster than that in the future. And most people don't even use the maximum potential of fiber to the premises. But fiber to the premises is expensive, and lots of people don't have it. Starlink, by the end of this year, will be out of beta, and everyone will be able to have it. And it's a big push for traditional internet companies to speed up their rollout of fiber to the premises, because the fact is, people are going to start using Starlink and getting the benefits of satellite internet that is fast and reliable, and they're not going to hold out and wait or pay over the top charges like is very common in the US for really, really slow internet connections, which are never ever going to get any better because the internet providers have no incentive to improve them. I hope you found this video helpful and useful. Please, if you have any questions, leave them down below. Give me a like. Subscribe if you want to see more on this channel. I have other smart home and home technology videos as well on this channel. And check out my car videos and my car tech videos as well. Stay safe, everyone, and thank you very much.